right. All right. So we are up to Proverbs chapter 9.
That's 9. Why did I say that's 9?
Okay. If I were to divide the book of Proverbs into sections, I would say this will be the final chapter of the first section. The reason I would do that is chapter 1, verse 1 starts with the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, and then it goes. When you get to chapter 10, it starts with the Proverbs of Solomon, and then it goes. So, yeah, I would break it up 1 through 9 as one section, chapters 10 through 24 as section 2, and then 25 starts another section. 25 starts with, These are also Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied out. And so those men would be copying out several hundred years down the road after Solomon's death. And these are not all of Solomon's Proverbs. I think it said somewhere he wrote like 2,000 and a whole bunch of Psalms. We can find that somewhere in Chronicles or Kings. It gives that. No, we won't do them all tonight. Fear not. And in fact, this chapter is quite short. It's only 18 verses. But as we've been reading through chapter by chapter, we will remember that what was the subject of chapter 8? Wisdom, and most of Proverbs is about wisdom in some way, but something that's different about wisdom in chapter 8, that a pattern we've seen in both chapter 1 and chapter 7, is that wisdom is being personified as if it is a woman. So we are talking about wisdom as if it's a person. And so she had been standing in public places. She had been crying out, inviting the simple and the naive to come and to learn from her and to receive instructions. That was throughout chapter 8. And then chapter 9 is a continuation of that thought. So 8 had ended, blessed is the man that heareth me, watching daily at my gates. Again, the speaker's wisdom, waiting at the post of my doors, wisdom's doors. For whoso findeth me, findeth wisdom, findeth life, and shall obtain favor of the Lord. But he that sinneth against me, to sin against wisdom, wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. Right, so the enders, she hath killed her beast, she hath mingled her wine, she hath also furnished her table. All right, so wisdom isn't speaking here, but we are talking about wisdom. She's the subject. We're looking at her. She has built her house. All right, she hath hewn out her 7 pillars. Now, what is the purpose of a pillar in connection with building a house? Support, literally to do what? Keep the roof up, right? Pillars keep things elevated. There are quite a number of pillars in Solomon's temple. There was a particularly famous scene where the roof, somebody literally brought down the roof because he was able to rest his 2 hands on the pillar of the house, even though his eyes had been blinded. And asked for the Lord, it was Samson in the time of Judges. And he killed more people that day of the Philistines than all the people he killed during his life when he had his strength. So, hewing out her 7 pillars.
So if I would read that correctly, I asked you a question about pillars.
Yeah.
Pillars being what? If we could have found an answer to that, being support to the house, rather than the question I asked. Right?
Yeah. That is how I answered it, right?
Yeah, okay. Now I realize
why.
Why?
Yeah. Just looking for a word search for pillars. Where else does pillar show up in the Bible? And you'd be able to see these events, and you can see the patterns of, When are they used? And so why are there 7 pillars? That's a question. Well, why are there 7 spirits of God listed in Revelation that are always before him?
Is it 7 like completeness or something?
7 tends to have a pattern of completeness or entirety, right? Is there anything that God doesn't see and know, which is what those spirits are saying that they go throughout the earth seeing? Is there any area he don't cover? No. All right. What's the number of the beast, of the Satan? Mark of the beast, 666, right? It's the imitation, the close but no cigar, right? So if wisdom is building a house and she has her 7 pillars, is her house going to stand? Yeah. So wisdom, which you know from verse 8, was there at the beginning. God was using it and displaying it throughout creation, how he built the mountains, how the ocean only goes so far, how the stars don't fall down. Wisdom on display from the very beginning. Does wisdom's house ever fail? Does it ever collapse? Does it ever fall in on her head? No, right? So wisdom hath built her house. She hath hewn out her 7 pillars. So you've got the wisdom's dwelling, the stability there. What is the church the pillar and ground of? The truth. Right? Our job, kind of like a billboard out there, is holding up the truth. All right? Yeah. She hath killed her beasts. She hath mingled her wine. She hath furnished her table. What does it sound like she's preparing? A feast. Yeah. You got beast, and you're mingling wine. That's not watering down the wine. That's got the idea of like spices. Okay, so she got the she got the fancy stuff out. She got the china out, right? The stuff you only get out at Christmas. All right. She killed her beast, mingled her wine, hath furnished her table. She hath sent forth her maidens. She crieth upon the high places of the city. Why do we think she sent forth her maidens? Probably bidding people to come, and says that she's out there herself, right? The hostess of this feast is out in the high places of the city. What is notable about what tends to happen at the high places of the city?
Building a congregation? Are you building it here? You can see them.
That's a good logical answer.
What is that?
He said you can see people, you can hear them. Where do they tend to build idols? In the high places. And you know who would build a whole bunch of idols? Solomon. In the high places. Yeah. She crieth in the highest places of the city. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. Well, what's hither? Her house. Come into wisdom's house, right? There's this bounty prepared. Come in and partake, right? Inviting the naive and inviting the simple. As for him that wanteth understanding, all right? When we read KJV and wanting, we're not talking about desire. We're talking about lack, all right? And she wanted for nothing. I mean, she didn't have a need of anything. So he who wants understanding is somebody who lacks understanding. All right. So as for him that lacks understanding, she saith to him, come, eat of my bread, drink of the wine which I have mingled. All right. You got that spice wine. How do you partake of this? Well, it's by heeding the instruction. So what's the instruction? Verse 6. Forsake the foolish and live, and go in the way of understanding. So you've got this man who lacks understanding, who she's inviting to come in and dine. Her instruction to him is to forsake the foolish. All right. What company have you been keeping, Bubba Gump? If you've been hanging out with fools, you need to stop. Okay? Forsake them and live. Go in the way of understanding. Has there been a lot of conversation in these first 9 chapters about ways and paths, and one particular path that is well lit, is straight, that wisdom guides down, and there's a whole bunch of other paths that have all sorry kind of outcomes that lead to death and pain and sorrow. And so there is a way of understanding. Okay? He that reproveth a scorner getteth to himself shame, and he that rebuketh a wicked man getteth himself a blot. Reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love thee. All right, in the New Testament, Jesus would say the expression about not casting your pearls before swine. Okay? A scorner is a mocker, a scoffer. If you try to chasten, to instruct a scoffer, a mocker, you hurt yourself. You get yourself shame, disgrace, dishonor. He that rebuketh a wicked man getteth himself a blot, some kind of mark of dishonor, right? How so? Reprove not a scorner, lest he hate you. This is a good example of why, no matter how well intended, your logical arguments cannot change anybody's heart. By nature, from the moment we're conceived, we are all scorners and mockers and wicked and vile. That is man by nature. And if God has not done a work of grace within us, we do not wish to be taught. And someone who is trying to tell us the right way and the right things and things of God, we lash out. And we hate that individual. Our words can't change anybody. So, you need to be discerning, and I need to be discerning about where we pour our time and effort and energy. You cannot change anybody's heart, but you can mentor. You can encourage. You can edify. You can build up. But you can only build somebody who's teachable. The teachableness comes from God. Right? That new spirit within us, the new man born again, it says a wise man, rebuke a wise man, and he will love you. All right? So there is a natural consequence that's felt when you are trying to reprove somebody, to tell them you are wrong. If they're in a state of being a scorner and a mocker or a wicked man, it's not going to help anything. They're just going to be mad at you. Does that mean that we don't teach anybody? No. The wise man, rebuke a wise man and he will love thee. Right? What was the beginning of wisdom? Fear of the Lord. Right? So if you are interacting with someone who has no fear of the Lord, don't waste your breath trying to correct their ways. They're not going to listen. Right? But someone who does fear the Lord, and again, we're all on a scale of our maturity. When someone is taking the time, so let's put it in that position. If I fear the Lord, and someone comes to me and says, "You're not doing right. This right here isn't lining up with this scripture right here," how I react should be, man, this person loves me enough to tell me the truth. Doesn't necessarily mean it's easy to hear. But if I get defensive and argumentative and clap back, then I am acting as a scorner. I am not demonstrating wisdom. And the whole chapter 9, this whole first 9 chapters is talking about the value of wisdom and seeking wisdom and how this is something worth pursuing. Its value is far greater than gold. So part of that is learning how to take correction. A large part of what I am called to do includes correction. If you get mad at me every time I tell you the truth, it's going to be a hard relationship. I'm obligated to do my job. And so this is part of us growing up in ourselves of how do I respond? Because how many here are perfectly perfect? Me neither. So there's room where we can be corrected and be taught. So we want to be wise even in that. All right? Don't make someone who is loving us enough to tell us the truth regret it. Fair enough? Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. All right? Notice the benefit to that. You've got a teacher who's loved, and the individual who's been taught is both wiser and increases in learning. All right? Versus shame, blot, and hatred. One reaction of the world, one reaction of the wise child of God. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. All right? There's a lot of folks out there who claim to be super smart. And by the world's standard and the world's wisdom, they may be. But by true wisdom, by God's wisdom, by the wisdom that doesn't change, that house that doesn't alter year to year or decade to decade, right? If you're not, you ever do a dot to dot, right? What number do you always start at? 1. If I just start over here at 72 and I just start connecting those dots like a crazy man, I connected all the dots. Yeah, but you didn't do it with wisdom, Bubba. It doesn't look right, right? You don't get the right picture. What is dot number 1 for you and I in wisdom every time? Fear of the Lord. He is worthy to be feared. He's worthy to be praised. He is worthy. We start there, and then these other connection points make a whole lot more sense, and you can get more of the big picture. So the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. To understand means to see, perceive, and recognize the distinction between something that is holy and something that is unholy. All right, in a man's own mind, anything that he does or wants to do, he can justify as good. Right? But if your first dot is the fear of the Lord, his definition trumps. It overrides what is holy, what is unholy. Why do they have all those ceremonial laws in the Old Testament about eating? What was the point of that? It was so that they would learn the distinction between something that God says is holy versus is unholy. All right? Now, the animals, we know that was just a type. But it was to teach a lesson, and then later, in Peter's day, in Acts, that type was removed, and it was all to lead up to showing that between men, what God has cleansed, don't you dare call unholy or common or profane. Okay? So the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. For by me thy days shall be multiplied. Who's now speaking again? Wisdom. We've gone back into talking from her voice, right? Actually, we've been talking to her voice. She crieth, whoso is simple. So since verse 4, she's been speaking. So she's been speaking, inviting in. She's been giving this instruction. Verse 11, for by me thy days shall be multiplied, and the years of thy life shall be increased. Is this the first time that we've heard this truth? That if you are heeding wisdom, you can avoid a life that was cut off? Right? Does that mean I'm going to live to be 108 if I pursue wisdom? No, not necessarily. But I can avoid a lot of the stupidity that can lead to my death. Right? We can make a lot of foolish decisions. Think of a 17-year-old in a muscle car. There's a lot of foolish decisions that can lead to a shortened death, a shortened life. For by me thy days may be multiplied, and the years of thy life shall be increased. If thou be wise, thou shalt be wise for thyself. But if thou scornest, thou alone shalt bear it. This is an interesting verse. I'd be interested in what do y'all think that means? Earthly wisdom is often validated by other people agreeing that you're wise. Right? I need to have all my degrees. They need to be on the wall. Oh, you need to call me Dr. So-and-so. Oh, Dr. So-and-so. And here's my 17 letters that come after my name. And here's where I've been published. And you've got all of this credentialing so that everyone else knows how wise I am. Right? If thou be wise, you shall be wise for thyself. Right? This is not for anyone else's view or opinion. Seeking wisdom, it's for your good. It's for your benefit. The flip side, but if thou scornest, so the scorner doesn't hear wisdom, doesn't hear instruction, hates it, doesn't learn, thou alone shall bear it. All right? So you've got one benefit that's just for you, and the others, well, if you're going to be a scorner, you're gonna bear the cost of that. You can't blame anybody else. You know, my little Bible has off to the side. It says personal responsibility. Probably pretty good summary there. All right. And then we're going to have one last little scene. In theater, we call it a little vignette, where you look over and you see something different going on from wisdom. We've got a foolish woman. All right, this foolish, arrogant, or stupid, or simpleton, foolish. A foolish woman is clamorous, loud, quarrelsome. A foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple and knoweth nothing. For she sitteth at the door of her house, on a seat in the high places of the city, to call passengers who go right on their ways. What's she calling out? Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. As for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he knoweth not that the dead are there, and that her guests are in the depths of hell. All right, we have foolish woman.
The foolish woman is in the high place alongside wisdom.
She is. It's the contrast, right? You have choices. Which woman are you going to pursue? The one that has real benefit, the one that has this feast prepared, this stable house, come in and eat and be wise and gain knowledge, right? That's good for you. Or will you be seduced by the carnal stuff, right? By this woman who's calling out to the same audience, right? We're calling out to the simple and the one that lacks understanding. And rather than growing in wisdom, she's enticing him with, hey, the forbidden stuff. It's always better, right? Whatever it is you want, that's fine, right? As long as no one finds out about it, it's great. That's the stolen waters are sweet and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. The picture there is that she's like a prostitute, and you're trying to do something that's wrong. And this is broader than just sexual sin. But he knoweth not that the dead are there, and her guests are in the depths of hell, the grave. Right? This is one of those, not the path of righteousness, not the path of wisdom. This is one of those many paths that lead to ruin and destruction in your life. So yeah. So you've got competing pictures Again, this is Solomon writing to my son, primarily, son, what kind of woman are you going to be pursuing? Is it going to be the path of wisdom? And we're not talking about an actual woman or a spouse here. But the manner of life that you choose, it's really going to be kind of one of these two. In your simplicity and naivete.
Can't touch it.
All right. Or pursuing this worldly path that leads to destruction. Does that make sense?
What?
These first 9 chapters make a little bit more sense. And Patrick answers because he wants me to hush.
No, you should keep on talking.
But I think it has been good.
Pumpkin,
Really
don't you?
used it, like you were saying the other night.
Pumpkin, don't you?
People pick them apart, and you don't really get
The flow.
the flow.
Now, granted, when we get to the next, chapters, it will be harder to find those threads because most of the style will be in forms of couplets, where you have 2 opposing or contrasting things, and it just feels like a laundry list or a series. And that's okay, because most of this has been teeing up the value of wisdom, the importance of discernment, looking for the better ways, and then it's going to give you a very wide range of, okay, here's wisdom in this scenario. Here's what it looks like. And hey, dummy, here's the opposite.